In the Fulchester Crown Court, Peter Elgar has pleaded guilty to a charge of attempting to obtain money by deception and confessed to making false statements in an insurance claim. He now faces further charges of having set fire to his shop premises, thereby damaging the property of his landlords and endangering the lives of the tenants above. The prosecution has just called its third witness, whose name, when it was called, seemed to take the defendant by surprise.
Your name is Gerald Arthur Stroud.
Yes.
And you live at 49 Ainsley Terrace, Cambridge.
Yes.
What is your occupation?
I'm an antique dealer.
Were you formerly in partnership with the accused Peter John Elgar in the premises known as Elgar and Stroud?
I was.
And when did you cease to be a partner in that business?
Nearly a year ago.
Yes, but the shop still goes under that name.
The shop doesn't exist anymore.
Yes, and I mean, at the time of the fire, the shop was still called Elgar and Stroud, even though you had left several months previously.
Yes.
Why was that?
Well, since I left of my own volition to join another firm, not in Fulchester, there seemed no reason to change the name. It carried some value and goodwill, and we both agreed it should be kept.
Yes. Now, would you tell the court as succinctly as possible, please, why the partnership broke up?
Well, for a number of reasons, but I suppose the two main ones were, first, with the cost of living rising so much in recent years and our annual turnover remaining about the same, there just wasn't enough in it for both of us. And also the second thing was we had had our differences in recent years, fundamental differences over business methods and our whole approach to trading in antiques.
Yes, so just under a year ago you resigned your partnership and went to work and live in Cambridge.
Yes.
Now, after you left, did you remain in contact with the defendant?
Oh, yes, we kept in touch. We spoke on the phone from time to time. I come to Fulchester occasionally. I have friends still here.
Yes. Now, Mr. Starr, will you please tell the court when you last saw the defendant?
You mean before the fire?
I'm sorry, I didn't put that question very well. When did you last see the defendant at his shop?
On the 19th of September.
Yes, that would be 3 days before the fire.
Yes.
Now, can you please describe that meeting for us?
Well, I went round there in the afternoon. We had a cup of tea together.
Was he expecting you?
No, I just dropped in. I found him in a very depressed frame of mind. I asked him about his mother, how she was. I knew she'd not been well for some time. He said she was about the same, neither better nor worse. I asked him how business was. He said it had been poor. Even the summer months had been disappointing. I asked him if there was anything else that was bothering him, and he said yes. He said he'd recently had a letter from the landlords, Chester and Hussey. The lease on the shop premises was due to expire at the end of the year. They were offering to renew the lease, but at a considerably higher rent. They said that the rent as fixed in 1966 was now unrealistic.
And what was his reaction to that letter?
Well, he was very upset about it. Angry, too. He said he was going to fight them on it. He said he wasn't going to pay the higher rent. The present rent was high enough. He said he'd already said this on the phone to them since receiving the letter, but they were adamant. If he wanted to renew the lease, he would have to pay the higher rent.
And what did he say to that?
Well, he said, well, then I'm afraid he said, the shop can go up in flames for all I care.
So rather than pay the higher rent demanded by the landlords, he said the shop can go up in flames for all I care.
Yes.
No, it wasn't. That wasn't what I said.
Silence in court.
You know that, Gerald. I didn't say that. Gerald, you know that.
Mr. Lotterby.
I didn't say that. I remember it distinctly.
Silence. Mr. Lotterby, if your client cannot remain silent, he is in some danger of being removed from the court. Mr. Elgar, your turn to speak will come, but you must not interrupt. Mr. Parson.
No further questions, my lord. Thank you, Mr. Stroud.
When the defendant said the shop should go up in flames for all I care, what did you take him to mean?
Well, at the time I didn't attach any importance to it.
You
I
didn't take it seriously.
Of course not.
But now you do take it seriously.
Well, yes.
Why?
Well, I could only think there was nothing else for it but to think that he'd done it.
Find it hot in here, Mr. Stroud?
It's quite warm, yes.
Perhaps it's because you're under such tension.
I'm not under any tension.
No? I would have thought it was rather a difficult thing for you to do, to come here and give evidence on this very serious charge against your former partner and friend.
Oh, yes, of course, there's that sort of tension, yes.
Yes. How long were you in the defendant partners?
14 years.
14 years, a very long time. And you were also good friends?
Yes.
Close friends?
Yes.
Am I right in saying for 12 of these 14 years you lived together?
We shared a large flat, yes.
I wasn't asking about the size of your establishment. I was asking if you lived together.
That's correct.
And it wasn't until the defendant's mother became seriously ill 2 years ago that he moved out and went to live with her.
Yes.
About a year after this, your partnership with the defendant broke up.
But that had nothing to do with his moving out to live with his mother.
Oh, I didn't say that it had. No, you've told the court that the partnership broke up because the shop wasn't doing well enough to support you both and because the two of you had disagreement about business methods.
Yes.
Was it an amicable separation, was it?
Yes.
No hard feelings on either side?
No.
Must be rare for a long, close relationship like yours to come to an end with, in such a friendly fashion.
That I wouldn't know.
Mr. Stroud, were you subpoenaed?
I'm sorry?
Were you given a summons to appear in this court?
No.
How then do you find yourself here in court as a material witness for the prosecution against your former partner and friend?
Well, the police came to see me, do you see?
Where and when was this?
Well, they came down to Cambridge, the first or second week in December. The shop was still partly in my name. I suppose that's why they looked me up.
And what did the police want to see you about?
Well, they said they were investigating the cause of the fire at Elgar and Stroud in Fulchester. There were allegations that Mr. Elgar had made false statements in his insurance claim. They were now trying to decide if there was a case against him for having started the fire.
What specifically did they ask you?
If I had any reason to believe he'd done so.
What did you say?
I said no, I had nothing to do with the place anymore. I didn't know anything that might help them. But later, about a week later, the inspector had left his card, you see, and asked if I would get in touch if I thought of anything. Well, after long and very careful thought, I rang him and made an appointment to see him. I told him about going to see Peter at the shop a few days before the fire and how angry he'd been about the letter from the landlord saying they wanted to raise the rent and what he'd said about the shop could go up in flames for all he cared. Well, you have to tell the truth in something like this. You can't hold back. To hold back is to lie, and it would be very wrong to lie about something as serious as this.
And can you be absolutely certain that those were the exact words the defendant used?
Absolutely certain.
Oh, one last question. In all the years you've known him, in what must have been a close and intimate relationship, have you ever known the defendant to commit a destructive act of violence?
Not offhand, no.
Not offhand? Oh, what an extraordinary thing to say. If you'd known he'd committed such an act, you'd remember it instantly. You wouldn't need to reflect on it.
I can't remember him committing such an act.
Thank you. You didn't seem very eager to say so.
Do you...
No examination, my lord.
Thank you. You may go, Mr. Stroud.
That concludes the case for the prosecution, my lord.
Very good.
I call the defendant, Peter John Elgar.
Mr. Elgar?